does a divorce usually happen? Well, I can't speak for all of Utah. I can speak for what happens in southern Utah where I practice, typically Washington, Iron, Beaver, and Kane counties, and even up into the Richfield area sometimes. But here's the typical process. It starts out where somebody says, hey, I want a divorce. And they serve the other person with paperwork. And it can be a bunch of things, petition, motion for temporary orders, and a bunch of other stuff like that. The person that got served typically replies and says, hey, I know you wanted it that way, but I want it this way. So they file most often an answer and usually a counterclaim that basically says, I disagree with this. I'm okay with these things. We might have an agreement right out of the gate, at least on some stuff. But then they counterclaim and say, well, I want it to look like this. Then, after that, the next process is some initial disclosures, initial discovery. So we're required within a few weeks of this petition and answer and counter petition and answer to the counter petition, we're required within a few weeks to provide what are called initial disclosures and a financial declaration. Now, the initial disclosures are essentially, hey, here's who I think might be my witnesses if this were to go to trial at this stage of the litigation, and this is what I think they're going to say, right? So I'm going to say, okay, my mom and dad are going to be the witnesses. My in-laws might be the witnesses. My spouse, maybe it's somebody from church. Maybe it's a kid's teacher. Maybe it's a therapist. But people we have a pretty good idea that we might use as a witness. We've got to list their contact information and what we think their testimony might be. Just a brief summary. That's kind of our initial disclosures. And then we have to, as part of those, there's the financial declaration where we basically say, look, here's all my tax returns, all my bank statements, all my pay stubs for the last little while. We've got to say, look, here's my income and expenses. You know what our budget was while we were married. I think my budget's going to look like now that we're getting divorced. Nobody can figure that out very well, but we take our best shot at it. You've got to submit any loan applications for the past couple of years. Now, here's where that's been kind of interesting on the loan applications in particular. Somebody might go down to apply for a car loan and say they make $120,000 so they can get a car loan. And then they put on their financial declaration they only make $60,000. But submit a bind. They either committed loan fraud or they've lied to the court. Which one is it going to be? Most people choose they don't want to get convicted of loan fraud, and they say, okay. So then we're trying to figure out what people's incomes are. So for child support calculations, we're trying to figure out what the family actually owns. What property are we talking about? Real estate, investments, insurance policies, any of those kind of things. What do we own? Where did it come from? We have to identify often the property that was owned before we got married. Was that property commingled? Did it become a marital asset? Was there property acquired after the marriage, and how does that treat it? So we've got to try and sort some of that out with these financial declarations. The next step is Utah, with some exceptions, requires that we go to mediation. Now, I love mediation. Mediation is probably my favorite way to resolve a case, and there's some reasons for that. But the mediation process is essentially, we do a lot of mediations virtually. So we're in a room, either virtual or physical, and the other side and their attorney is in a room, either virtual or physical. And then we hire a mediator. Mediators that I like to hire are usually someone who's been doing it a long time, that was a mediation, it's taught mediation. A lot of retired judges or other experienced family law attorneys, and that mediator is going to help go back and forth between the two rooms. And they do a couple of things. Number one, they say, hey, here's an offer from the other side. What do you think? And they also will help brainstorm with me and the other attorneys involved ways to maybe solve the case, ways to reach a settlement. Now, at that point, I will tell you 90% of cases resolve at mediation, which is a good thing. When we settle cases at mediation, at least in my office, our attorney's fee is somewhere $5,000 to $8,000 most of the time. Sometimes it's less, sometimes it's more, but that's a pretty good range of where we are when we settle a case at mediation. Most cases settle at mediation, and we're done. We just have to write up some final documents, case settled, we're done, and that's really the best way. The reasons, you control the outcome, and you're not spending a crap ton more money. So if you don't settle at mediation, I'm going to talk about kind of what happens with that in another video. But that is, because 90% of cases settle at mediation is the typical process in a divorce case here in southern Utah. So If you want to make it easy, work with somebody who knows what they're doing, who's guided thousands of people through this process, please give me a call. My name is Travis Christiansen. I work at Greater Zion Law, and we'd be happy to help walk you through that process and be your knight in shining armor, if you will, to help find solutions and settle your case at mediation. Because like I've said, that's usually the best way to get things done.